Well, no better segue we can make than, Tim, to your report on
Aborting the Biden candidacy.
presidential aspirant and pro-choice stalwart, I think, Joe Biden. When we last left Mr. Biden, he was really exploding in the polls, gaining distance between him and his 23
challengers. By the way, the elite media is misreporting it. It's not 23 candidates. It's actually 24, but who's counting? I guess.
Who are they leaving out?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, just anyone random?
I have to go through all 24 profile pictures to figure it out. But here's what I think it seems to be happening here. I think we can preclude the idea that Joe Biden has accumulated a massive lead because of his obvious assets and his and what a strong candidate is. And I think we can safely say that his overwhelming lead really says a whole lot more about the 23 other candidates than it does about Biden.
Let me stop you there and ask you a question. If that 23 other people, if it was 3 other people, okay,
right?
Do you think would how much of that other support, right? So let's call it, 80% are for other than Biden, 20% are now for Biden. How much of that 80% would migrate to Biden or stay away from that establishment?
I think that's a very good question, because in a 4-candidate race, it's obviously different than a 24-candidate race. Donald Trump took great advantage of a 16-man field because the anti-Trump vote was so splintered among the other 15 candidates that nobody could get any traction. In this case, my guess is that if you had a 4-candidate field, Biden's lead might be even larger. Because I think what you're seeing out there, if we preclude the idea that Biden's just such a strong candidate, that's the reason he's way ahead. I think what you're seeing is that Democrats, rank and file Democrats, the party writ large across the country, is a lot closer to the center than you would think from the coverage of all these radicals running for president. The Democrats want one thing, Scott, one thing only. They want to beat Trump.
They want power.
They want power. They want to beat Trump. They'll take, look, I think the polls are saying we'll take anybody that appears to have the greatest chance of beating Trump. And we don't really care about his ideology. Now the radicals do. The base does. He's going to be a punching bag throughout these primaries because he's got 35% in the polls. Bernie Sanders has 18. He's doubled Bernie Sanders' numbers, and nobody else is even out of single digits, out of 24 candidates. And like I said, if you look at the field of sad sack and hapless candidates, Scott, this says a whole lot more about the rest of the field than it does about Biden.
Who is you think the number one contender to the Biden effort to be the Democrat nominee for president?
I think it's got to be Bernie Sanders because he's the real thing. Look, if you're at one of these new socialist, democratic socialist, whatever you want to call it, kind of voters, you kind of want the real deal, don't you? You want the undiluted and proven credentials. For me, it's
Ron Paul, Tim.
Yeah.
I want Ron Paul. That's exactly right. But I don't want Ron Paul light, and I think that's true for them on the other
side. It's true because all these others are just poseurs. I mean, most of them, people like Cory Booker and Kirsten Gillibrand. I mean, they're pretending to be like radical socialists, and it just isn't flying at all. Cory Booker, by the way, do you see his numbers?
No.
2.5%. I mean, it's gone over like a lead balloon, his campaign. But what I want to talk about also before we run out of time here is Ukraine.
Tim, I'm making all the time in the world for you. Okay, go ahead.
As you always do.
Yeah, the Biden issue, his children and the Ukrainian oil. Let's talk about it.
And well, now, what I'm wondering is, as we put this into context, we're going to play what Peter Schweitzer, who's written the book Secret Empires, which covers the Biden empire.
Oh, really? Is he like the
Sy
Hersh for the Biden family?
In a sense, yes. And, of course, he's written a book. He wrote the book Clinton Cash, which was all about the Clinton Foundation. And that book really had legs this one will too. And I think what we're ultimately have to ask, and yes, this early in the campaign, because you can't change the facts of what happened during the Obama administration, will the Ukraine and perhaps China scandals involving Joe Biden be the equivalent of Hillary Clinton's email problem? Is it something that can be overcome, or will the obvious use of Biden's power as vice president to line the pockets of his son, is that something he can even overcome? And Peter Schweizer's done the best work on this. He's appeared on TV a lot talking about it. And this sort of summarizes Biden's problem. Go ahead and play Peter Schweizer.
From the beginning, when the book came out, and even today with the New York Times confirming my reporting, what the leftists basically do is attacking me personally and now attacking the New York Times. They're not disputing any of the facts. And the facts are simple. Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, got on the payroll of a very corrupt Ukrainian energy company called Burisma in the spring of 2014, where he was paid about $50,000 a month to do, quote unquote, regulatory compliance for this company. And the problem, of course, is Hunter Biden had no background in Ukraine, no background in energy. What he did have was a father who was vice president of the United States, who was responsible for all aid flow of Western dollars going to Ukraine. And Joe Biden made decisions about when to look the other way, when money disappeared.
Res ipsa loquitur. The facts speak for themselves. And he can't reverse any of that. He can't claim, like Hillary, that those were just personal emails, for example,
Tim,
about weddings and stuff.
Catholics and lawyers know it's re ipsa loquitur, okay? So firstly, no, 100%. And also, this to me is even, maybe not even worse, but for somebody who wants to be president of the United States, maybe even worse, Tim. He manipulated the arms services induction rules so that he could get Hunter Biden he was too old to join the military, but Joe wanted him to have that credentialed, probably to buoy his future political thing. He made a special rule for the Navy that Hunter Biden then showed up high on cocaine.
Yep.
And he
I was going to say
pooch.
this whole thing about him getting this job for $50,000 a month in a country he knew nothing about, in an industry he knew nothing about, that was then protected by Joe Biden when the lead investigator in Ukraine, the equivalent of like the FBI director, was on the case of Burisma Holdings. He threatened to take away Ukraine's loan guarantee, so he played hardball to protect his son.
And then what was the result?
And 4 months after he'd been Hunter Biden been kicked out of the military for testing positive for cocaine. I mean, okay, so you're not going to use that, but you don't have to.
He never even got in.
No,
that was for his first day. He showed up at Norfolk high on coke. He couldn't go for 3 days. He couldn't stay off.
Coked out.
But I want you to say what happened to that Ukrainian official who they pressured.
He was fired.
Boom.
Yep. I mean, so it's the most obvious case of influence peddling. And what I'm saying, Scott, is I don't know how he sidesteps this maybe during the Democratic primary, because it would make Obama look bad to bring it up too much, and they don't want to do that.
8 years of a scandal-free administration. Let's not go ahead and mar a perfect record by His Holiness the Obama.
Should I mention the check we got from the IRS for having been colluded against by the IRS?
That was an oversight.
Obama.
That wasn't. That's not. Well, it's not a scandal.
Targeting of conservative organizations.
If Anderson Cooper doesn't care about it, Tim, not a scandal.
Okay, you've silenced me fully and finally.
That's all the time we have for this segment on The Uprising. Thanks so much for joining us. And
Pleasure.
People can read your writings at LibertyNation.com. And also, why don't you go ahead and plug the radio show?
Radio show, Liberty Nation Radio. It's up every Sunday morning on the site, but also available a little bit before that.
If you want to go back to old-timey radio, you can check your local listings. It's syndicated in how many stations
We're
now?
about 36 stations.
Boom.
And our flagship is WRC, Washington, D.C., on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings. It's quite a compliment. We had just one slot on Saturday morning at 11 on WRC Washington. They like the show enough that they run a repeat of it 2 other times on the weekend. So
Liberty Nation Radio, starring Tim Donner, sometimes co-starring
hosted
by, and sometimes joined by yours truly.
I wanted to say that because I'm a very humble person. Did you know that, Scott?
You're not the star.
I'm really one of the most humble people you'll ever meet. I'm so humble that I can recognize my own humility.
Your humility is only eclipsed by your humbleness, to be sure.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
Much.